All right, welcome back to part 2 of this week's lecture. We're going to talk about communication next. And I broke this up just so it would be a little bit easier for you guys to watch. Instead of one really long video, I'm breaking it up into 2. So communication is really important, right? So we've talked about social structure, and we can't be social if we can't communicate, right? So communication is huge. So let's think about the ways in which we communicate. We're going to use all of our senses, right? So what's one way we communicate? We communicate through smell, right? If we remember, this is called olfaction, okay? Olfaction. And we know olfaction is still hugely important for our strepsirrhines, our prosimians, our lower primates, right? They use it a lot. And that would make sense because they socially don't spend a lot of time in close contact with each other, okay? Some of them do. Some of them are outliers, like our ring-tailed lemurs who are in big groups, but they will still use it. They will stink fight. So those ring-tailed lemurs will take those big, long, beautiful tails, and they have scent glands on the insides of their wrists. They'll rub that gland on that tail, and they'll shake it at each other. Why would they do that? Well, they don't want to actually fight because fighting could get you hurt, right? So if we can find a way to communicate our fitness, right, our superiority, our whatever it is, to a challenger without having to physically come to blows, that's better. So the stinkier we are, right, the better we're going to be at stink fighting, right? And our stinkiness would indicate our health and our fitness, right? So that makes sense. Olfaction is still huge. Many of our other solitary foragers will use scent marking to help establish their physical territory, right? Because they don't want to come in contact with others and compete. So olfaction is still really, really huge. We still use olfaction as humans. So, and I would write this down, hint. So one of the ways that olfaction becomes really important for humans, let's think about females, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about this in mating strategies and dominance and all of that stuff, but it's beneficial for females to reproduce at the same time, right? Because what we just learned in social structures is that one of the things that is something that we fight over or are territorial over is access to mating females. So that means males become really agitated, really excited, really aggressive when females come into estrus, right? When we're ready to mate. And we want to avoid having that happen all year round. So it makes sense for females to reproduce at the same time. This happens to human females, right? So if you think about a group of females that live in a dorm together, that are on a sports team together, best friends who spend a lot of time in close physical proximity, their menstrual cycles will start to sync. Okay? This is science. I'm sure you've heard this, and if you're a female taking this class, I'm sure you've experienced this, right? So that's a remnant of those times that we lived in these large social groups and females wanted to come into estrus at roughly the same time because we wanted to avoid prolonged periods of male agitation. So we do that through olfaction, right? Our hormones and pheromones, right, are sending off signals. Okay, that's how our bodies biologically know to start syncing those menstrual cycles. So if I were to ask you a question about female or about olfaction playing a role in human communication, that might be the answer, right? Other things, again, we're going to talk about in olfaction with humans. Scent, so sometimes if you are missing somebody, right, you're going to want to wear their sweatshirt or a piece of their clothing because it smells like them and it reminds you of them. Oftentimes, if we have babies that are in the NICU, they might ask the mother to like sleep with an object or something like that that they can then put in with the baby, and the baby can smell their mother. So olfaction isn't a primary form of communication. It's not something that we use consistently and actively, but it's still very much something that we communicate with at a much more basic level. So that's our sense of smell. Our sense of hearing, right? So language, I'm talking to you, you guys hear me. So language is obviously critically important for humans, but we also know that it's really, really important for primates. When we talk about communications, we have our groups like our howler monkeys and our gibbons and siamangs that will call. They have beautiful throat sacs. It makes their call really loud. They can vocally communicate their territory and proximity to others. But all primates are going to use vocalizations. They are a chatty, a chatty animal across the board. So I did mention our gelada baboons. Sorry guys, this video is doing the same thing to me as the last one. So if you see me doing some weird things, it's because it's pausing on my screen. So we did talk about our gelada baboons are really chatty because they're often looking down. Yes, geladas are often looking down at the ground because that's where they forage. We also know like our vervet monkeys. We didn't really talk about vervet monkeys in taxonomy because we're not going to touch on every single animal. But our vervet monkeys live in Africa. They have three main predators. Raptors, which are going to be like eagles and hawks, snakes, and leopards. And there's a famous study in which they recorded vervet calls and played them back. And what they were able to find is that there was very distinct calls for each one of those types of predators. So if they heard the snake call, all the monkeys would look down at the ground, like run up into the trees because you want to avoid the snake on the ground. If they heard the eagle call or the raptor call, they would all like huddle together and look up in the air because you want to avoid a threat coming from above. So vocal communication is huge. We'll even see in groups like our colobus monkeys and Diana monkeys, they'll all kind of live in these polyspecific groups like our marmosets and tamarins. And they're in various levels of the forest. So they're not competing for a food resource, but they understand each other's calls. So if a Diana monkey makes a call for a leopard, a colobus monkey knows what that call means. So they all have their own different language, but they are multilingual. They understand each other's calls. So vocalization is huge. So that's our sense of hearing. Scent, hearing, sight is huge, okay? We are going to, obviously we've touched on that briefly when we talked about different coat colors, right? Being able to see an infant that has a strikingly different coat color, or know that an emperor tamarin and a cotton top tamarin look physically different. In our estrus females, we're going to see big, bright red sexual swellings on their rear end, so the males are going to see that. They're also going to know from the pheromones what's happening, but visually they'll be able to see that. Visualization is huge. That's why it's so important that as we move through the primate order, our ability to make facial expressions becomes really critical. So juveniles will often play fight, okay? Play fighting is huge. They tussle a lot. We'll see a lot of that happening. If you guys watched the video, and I hope you did, of the snow monkeys or the Japanese macaques, you saw those juveniles tussling and playing. So sometimes those play fighting, like that play fighting, that tussling can become aggressive. So when do you know that somebody jumping on you is doing it playfully or doing it aggressively? And there is what's called a play face. So I will make my play face at you, right? What I'm doing next is playful. I'm letting you know through my play face, right? It's an excited, face. It's communication about communication. It's meta communication. So I'm letting you know through that face that what I'm doing next is meant to be fun and playful. We also have visually, we can see dominance and submission, right? So if I am dominant at you, right, I might raise my eyebrows, right, and give you like a hey face. And so primates will do that. You'll see a dominant threat face, okay? As the monkey on the receiving end, what I'm probably going to do is make a submissive gesture. So a dominant primate's going to have his chest open, wide, like erect. He's going to make a really like a face that's like, right? You're going to know that that's the dominant animal in that situation because of their body language. Visually, you're going to see that, okay? As the submissive animal, I'm going to be more hunched over. I'm going to take up less space. I'm often not going to make direct eye contact, so I might just be looking at you out of the corner of my eye. I might be like putting out a paw, right, as a gesture. And I might be lip smacking. Lip smacking is something that we see a lot, where they go, right? And I might be doing that and making the noise, right? I'm appeasing you, okay? So visually, you can see that I'm being submissive. Visually, you can see that I'm being dominant, okay? So I always like to say, like, think about the WWE wrestlers when they come out, right? When they have their theme song, you know, their chests are always big and puffed up, and they've got a swagger, and they're pointing to the crowd. Those are all cues of dominance visually, of being big and tough, right? So visual communication is huge. That also comes into play with infants. The reason infants look different visually is because those visual differences create in us a sense of care. That's why babies and puppies and kittens are all so cute, right? We don't know what makes them cute. I'll talk about what makes them cute a little bit later, but they're cute. And it instills in us like a need to care for them. Visual communication, very, very important. And then finally, we have our sense of touch, right? Touch is huge. So our primates will groom each other. They groom each other much more than is necessary for cleanliness. There's an aspect of hygiene involved, but a lot of it is communication about your relationship, right? When you're in a caring relationship, whether it's with your mom or a partner or a child, right? You physically touch each other. You communicate through touch, through hug, through tactile, right? So grooming is really important. A dominant male will groom much more than he is groomed. And the reason is he's showing his level of care for the group, right? That is his social currency, okay? He is able to show the group that he is in charge and a caring alpha male by grooming and participating in grooming, okay? And again, for us, the way that we interact with our infants and our young is very tactile. So tactile communication is huge amongst all of our primates. So that is communication. Again, that's going to be hugely important. Okay, janky video again. That's going to be hugely important in everything we talk about. Social groups, genetic fitness, communication. We're going to keep coming back to those, okay? So you guys have a quiz this week and a discussion question, so go ahead and head over to those. As always, if you have specific questions, email me. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Also, look through your coloring book. It is worth your while to at least skim some of these sections to back up what I've talked about. The next exam, the next two exams are going to be short answer. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to have to explain it to me in a sentence or two. So when I say short answer, I don't mean you should write a book. I mean you should give me like 2 or 3 sentences. Sometimes you can bullet point, but you kind of have to understand the concepts because that's the way the questions are going to work. So you'll see some of that in the quizzes. If there is something that you're not grasping, please make sure you're watching the videos. But also you can touch base in this, okay? You should be able to find some supplemental that might help you. If you're truly just confused, always reach out to me and I'll do my best to describe it to you or to give you a hint. But again, you're not going to be able to Google and copy and paste a lot of this. So please, please, please make sure you're watching the videos and supplementing with the Human Evolution Coloring Book text if you need some more support. All right. Have a great week. I'll see you in the next module.